Hello YouTube, this is Lynn with Stitched Anew, and today I thought I would walk you through how I put together the Oh My Stars pattern by Pat Sloan. It is a great free pattern from her website, and I will link you to it. Toys that she keeps dropping on the floor, but she has to be on her perch so she can watch what I'm doing. The next step in this process is to take those 3-inch squares and fit them onto the block surrounding the 5-inch focus fabrics, which will be the stars. And of course, Lady Girl's got to come up and watch, because this is one of her favorite parts, watching me sew. I would show you a little bit closer what I'm doing with these star points and how I'm getting them kind of lined up. So this is my top corner, and in order for me to get the right side of my fabric, because some of them are directional, so this one is a directional fabric and needs to go straight up, I have been taking the pin that I held them up with and putting it in on the side star needs to be connected to the block. So I put that for this one, and this one, it will go here. And I know, based on the direction that the pin is facing, this is the side that I need to have my corners meet. To get the corner, so this is my 3-inch square. this is where I want my point to be. I'm going to take this square and line it up on here, matching this edge and this edge. Don't have it there yet. Once I have that lined up, once I have that matched up, you'll see I have this 1/4 inch tape on my machine bed. I have the red line lined up with my needle, and then I have a 1/4 inch on either side. So to get a 1/4 inch seam, what I'm going to do, I'm not marking the lines on my square. I will line this corner up with the red line at the top, and this corner with the red line here at the bottom. So they will be perfectly lined up so that I will sew right on that line as long as I keep my points lined up on my tape. So I've got my point lined up with my needle. I have this point lined up with my red line down here, and then I can sew straight through. Now, since I have more than one point to sew, this is my other square. Here's my needle telling me I need to have it on this side, and I will take this and line up these two edges. I'll pull my pin out, and again, I'll line up this point with my red line, this point with my red line, and as long as I keep this point on that red line all the way through, I will have a straight line. So you'll see, there's my straight line. Now, before I cut these apart, I do an additional step that Pat doesn't add into her directions. I want to do something else with these corners that I'm going to cut off. So I will use the corner of my presser foot here, which will give me a little bit more than a 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to sew an extra line on there. And I'm just following, using that stitch line, keeping it pushed up against that presser foot. And here I'm going to do the second one. So that gives me 2 lines of stitching. You see that? And what I'll do is I will cut in between those 2 lines of stitching, and then I'll already have a half square triangle made once I cut them apart. Cut these apart. Pieces to the ironing board. And I like to give a small spray of starch, and then I will iron them flat to set those seams in, and then I'll flip the corner over. Put an extra thread in there. Let's do that one a little more. He's not laying too flat. Okay. Now that I have these both flipped over, I still have this extra piece in here that I need to trim off. So I'm going to head over to the cutting table. Alright, here I am on the cutting table. So I'm going to take this corner and I'm going to flip it back so I can see my 2 stitch lines here. Then I'm going to take my ruler, which is long enough to go completely across, and I'm going to lay it in the center of that seam. And I'm going to take my rotary cutter and cut it apart. And now I have that corner cut off, and I can flip it back in place. I have a large stack of those flippy corners so far, and I will be doing another project with them. So let's see that again. So here's my other square. I'm going to flip that corner back, take my ruler, line it up so that I have mostly a 1/4 of an inch in there. Cut them apart between the stitch line, so I still have a seam allowance on both of them, and flip my corner. Now I'll go back to the sewing machine and I'll add my other flippy corner. Now I'm ready to add those second flippy corners here to make the point. So again, I'm going to take my square and I'm going to line it up with this outside edge, even on both sides. And you'll see it overlaps the first flippy square we did. And again, I'm going to line that corner up on the red at the top and the corner up on the red line at the bottom, and sew straight through, making sure I keep that bottom corner on that red line. Now, one more time, take my corner, line it up with this outside edge, starting at that corner, going to this corner. Again, on my red dot, my red line, and this one is on my red line as well. Now I've got that line there, but I want to do one more line so that I have that half square triangle when I'm done. So again, I'm going to line it up with the edge of my foot with that stitch line. Hello, lady girl. Let me sew. Let me sew. And I'm going to sew straight on that stitching line. Line this one up. Again, there's my 2 stitch lines. I'm going to cut my pieces apart. If Lady Girl will let me, I'll head over to the iron and I will iron those flat and then trim again. Look at this. I'm trying to do a sewing video and you're over here in the middle with your wiggly butt and your tail wagging. Your little tail wagging all over the place. They don't want to see your tail wagging. They were trying to see what I'm doing with my sewing. Yes, they are. They're trying to see what I'm doing with my sewing. And you're over here in the middle of this shop. Tell everybody hi. Say hi, this is Lady Girl. Okay, once again, I've got my second flippy corners on. Give them a squirt. Set the seam. Flip them open. They should be very close to the same size as the original square. Again, set the seams, open it up. Again, should line up pretty close there. If not, I will need to revisit my seam allowances and resew. Alright, this time, again, I'm going to unflip the corner. Line this up so I have about a little less than 1/4 of an inch on either side of that seam. Cut it apart. Open it back up. I'll set that one to the side. Again, open the flippy corner. Line this up. Cut it apart. Now, since I'm done with both of my flippies, I'm going to turn this around and get my larger ruler. This is a 5-inch square. So I'm going to find the 2.5-inch line and line it up with the point here on this block. And make sure I have at least 1/4 of an inch past that. So I'm going to line this up so I have 5 inches square. And you'll see I have a little bit of extra fabric all the way around. So make sure this is on 2.5, so I'm right in the middle. I'm going to trim 2 sides. Flip it around. Now I can line this side up with the 5-inch mark on my ruler. So you see 5 inches. And see if there's any extra here to be trimmed off. And you'll see just some little edges and a few threads. Same with the other. Set it down. Find that 2.5, which is half of 5 inches. Put it on that block. So my point is there. I have 5 inches all the way around, and I'm going to trim 2 sides. Flip it around. Now I can use that 5-inch mark on both edges and trim whatever's extra. And that's all that's left. So I have my last 2 points left to add to my design wall. And as you see, this is all that I have left over. So they're just little scraps that came off when I was sewing these. Now that I've got those last 2 points together, I'm going to add them back to my design wall. There. Here. And you'll see the points begin to make the stars. So now our Oh My Stars pattern actually starts pulling out the stars once we've got our flippy corners on there. And now we'll sew all those 5-inch squares, because everything is now 5-inch squares, to each other to get our quilt top going. When I'm getting ready to sew all the 5-inch squares together, I like to start with the first 2 rows here. I will start at the bottom, and I'll take the one on the right and fold it to the one on the left and set it down. One on the right to the one on the left. And each time when I set them down, I make sure I keep them in the same direction. So when I'm setting them down, I make sure this side is always on the right. Last one. Show you. Here they are. So this is that right side. I will put a pin there. This is going to be the side that I sew on. So I'm going to take this one, move it around. So that is the side next to my needle. And I will feed these 2 at a time through here to get all of them lined up. So I'll line, so this is the side that I'll be sewing. I'll move you over here so you can see a little better. And I'll make sure these are lined up perfectly straight. And again, following those lines, I'm going to line up this right edge with that black line, which is my 1/4 inch. I'm going to sew through. Now, at this point where these come together, I'm going to make sure I'm just shy of where those 2 points come together. I'm going to run this all the way through. Now, if I did it correctly, I should get a good point. See, I've missed just a little bit. So let's try that again. There we go. There's our point. So I'm going to keep going with Lady Girl helping me sew here. And I'm going to get the next set. So as again, this right side, I'm going to line them up and run them through. There we go. She's wanting down for a minute. She loves to get up on my sewing table and watch me sew and take her nap on her little perch. So each set, I'm going to line up that right side and run them through following that black 1/4 inch line on the right side. See, here's our top, and each pair will line up from top to bottom. So the next step I do, I'm going to flip this around. So I have, this is my top. I'm going to do the top seam. I'm pressing that seam allowance to the top. The bottom one, I'm pushing it to the bottom. Flip them together. Right here. I'm going to have one seam allowance going one way and the other one the other way. I'm going to put a pin in there to hold it. Match those ends. Again, I'm going to follow that black line that I've got on the tape. Following it along. Okay, now I'm to that center. I'm going to make sure those two seams are nested just by feeling it with my finger. And keep going. Seam so it doesn't flip. Now, first two together. I'm going to continue. So this one is pointing down. My next one, I'm going to make sure the seam allowance is pointed up. I'm going to take this one, flip it on top. Nest those seams together. Put that pin in there to hold the center together. Straighten those edges, line everything up, and do the next one. Once I get to that center point, I adjust, make sure everything's lined up, and keep going. Again, now I've got the next section sewn up. I'm going to open the next one up. This seam, I forget, is pointing up, so this one needs to point down. And again, flip the top over, nest those seams together, put my pin in. Line the sides up. Readjust. And I continue through the whole string. So again, this one's down. Push this one up. Flip it. Nest the seams. Make sure they're bumping against each other there. Put my pin back in. Line up my edges. Adjust. Extra thread in there. Again, open it, flip the next one open. That one's going to be stubborn. There we go. Alright, this one's up, so this one will go down. Flip it over. Make sure those seams are nested. Put my pin in. Thread not in. Let's try that one again. New thread. Alright, start again. Okay, last one. Again, open it up. See, this one's going down. Finger press this one going up. Flip it over. Nest those two seams together. As long as you have cut your pieces accurately and trimmed them up accurately, this all should go together with no problems. So again, I'll run this last one through. Now, I've made it all the way to the bottom. Now that I have completed the center of the quilt, I'm working on those edges. I make the 4 flying geese pieces that will finish out the stars that go out into the border, and then following the pattern to make sure I get the right sizes of strips for that outside border, I sew those flying geese onto the border and then attach one side at a time until I have all the borders attached to the book. Here we go. Here is Pat Sloan's Oh My Stars, put together in about 4 hours. Spent about 2 hours this morning. I've spent another 2 hours this afternoon, and the top is all together. So that is how quick the top will go together. Now I just need to figure out a backing and quilt and bind it, and we'll have a finished quilt. Thank you, Pat, for this beautiful pattern, and I hope you guys will enjoy making it. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed our content, please give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. We really would like it, and it costs you nothing. What will you get to do today? Stitched anew means to repair or create something in a fresh and new way, or combines the literal act of sewing with the figurative idea of a complete restart or renewal. What will you get to do today?